The New York Jets have wrapped up their second preseason game of the year, and it was a 15-12 victory against the Carolina Panthers. It was a field goal fest for the Jets. Austin Seibert kicked the majority of the New York Jets field goals. A lot of players stood out. Who are those players, and how do they find a role on this New York Jets roster? Let's roll.
J-E-T-S, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Samini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Welcome in, everyone. We are here for our post-game coverage of the New York Jets matchup against the Carolina Panthers. We are also simulcasting on my guest channel, Mr. Gunny Gumby of New York Jets Situation Report. It's been a while, Gunny, but glad to have you back on.
It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute, bro. I feel like, as both of us are doing our thing, getting ready for the season to kick off. It's just been a busy mess, but hey, man, glad to be here. Let's talk about some preseason football.
100%. Like I said, the New York Jets have wrapped up their second preseason contest against the Carolina Panthers, in which they won 15-12. Now, Gunny, 15-12 victory wasn't too high scoring. All the points were scored on field goals. The Jets did have some touchdown opportunities, though. You saw the pass to Zach Kuntz. He just missed his feet getting in the end zone for a touchdown. Obviously, you have Andrew Peasley, Steven Martinez. Steven Martinez became a fan favorite after the first preseason game, as some fans classified him as a standout player. Both of them, both Peasley and Martinez, seem to struggle in the second week of preseason. Like I said, Kuntz didn't get those feet in. What do you really take away from the offense's performance? Obviously, like I said, you have the running backs, Davis, Allen, those guys. What do you just take away in general?
Well, I think the first thing when it comes to the offense that I noticed today was that Olu Fashanu was without question the right pick for the New York Jets. I mean, they moved him to the right side this week. We saw him last week on the left side dominate in terms of the pass protect. He also showed drastic improvement in run blocking as well, something we were kind of concerned about when he was drafted that he had to work on. You're seeing this dude get better, it seems like, every day. But what I noticed today on the right side, after he got his initial freaking hold, he became a wall on the right side as well. And now I look at that and I realize, like, the Jets really have a no BS freaking legitimate, how do I put this, swing tackle.
Yep.
I was thoroughly impressed seeing him do what he did today. But not only that, man, Braylon Allen is going to be a problem. Braylon Allen is legitimately going to be a problem for defenses. This is a guy who is a wrecking ball as he go ahead and breaks through tackles. You see him lowering, and he always falls forward as he's running. I've been impressed with him over the last couple of weeks. Again, it was a bit of adjustment. It seems like the Panthers really came in today to kind of focus on the running game. But you mentioned both backup quarterbacks. I won't lie to you. I thought today we'd have an opportunity to really see a separation of who was going to be QB3. And I think, we have more questions on whether or not the Jets will actually carry 3 QBs, vice maybe just 2 after seeing today's performance. As they opened up the playbook for these guys and give them more opportunities, you see them. The processing aspect is a little bit slower. They had time in the pocket. I don't really believe they were pressured that much. I think that they had time in the pocket, but the decision making was a little bit off. Adrian Martinez specifically with that errant throw in the middle, wide open, freaking on the slant. That could have been a nice touchdown, but I don't know where he was throwing it to, but he threw an interception. But Peasley did the same thing. He took a sack trying to go ahead and get us out of the pocket when on a slant route right down the middle, right in front of him, wide open freaking wide receiver down the middle. So both of them missed opportunities to go ahead and get score. I will say this. I like the play design. You're seeing a lot of motion again being utilized today. The play design is allowing these wide receivers to take advantage of their strengths and then taking advantage of it in the middle of the field. Now, we know that Aaron Rodgers historically is not a fan of working the middle of the field, but maybe they're looking to go ahead and kind of change it up a little bit and throw defenses off because defenses have tape on that when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. But seeing a couple of times plays develop in the middle of the field that unfortunately our backup QBs couldn't figure out. Frustrating, but you can at least say this. The offensive line looked good. Braylon Allen looked good. And a couple of those wide receivers getting open also something to be impressed with.
Yeah, kind of to piggyback there on what you said about Braylon Allen, I've seen obviously Braylon Allen has been getting a ton of high praise from media, staff, players, everything. His ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and also to just be a machine and bulldoze players. I mean, the guy's built like a defensive lineman, but I think someone who hasn't been getting enough credit is Isaiah Davis. He's been back there returning kicks and punts as well as playing a very solid role on the offense. We saw him, the back to the I think first or second offensive drive it was, Davis looked great. He had that great return on the punt, and then it's, 4th and 2, I believe it was, and then you see Peasley throw that pass right at Braylon Allen's knees that he can't jar in. So that was definitely a drive killer. But Braylon Allen, staying with that topic of running backs, Israel Abanikanda, fine performance there. He had some nice runs. I wouldn't say he really stood out. He averaged 4.8 yards a carry, 6 carries for 29 yards. You look at a player like Izzy, he's on the bubble and making a roster spot of earning a roster spot. What do you think he really needs to do to break through and, force the Jets to carry 4 running backs?
Yeah, nah, Izzy tonight was another guy that kind of stood out as well, right? He was on my notes and of individuals that I saw kind of put some good ball on film. You're seeing more of a violence about his approach, more of a physical aspect to his running game. I think when you're behind freaking guys like Brees Hall, Brandon Allen, and Isaiah Davis, you realize being the fastest guy in the room might not be enough. A level of physicality has to be brought to the table, and you've seen that now in back-to-back games. It's almost as if like he's understanding he has to kind of reinvent himself to make himself more competitive in this running back room. I love that for him, man. This is a guy who's a Jets fan as well. Like I think that him making the team would be kind of cool, but I think he's got a long shot now. I think that when you brought in Isaiah Davis and Brandon Allen, the Jets kind of made us aware that they might have had their reservations about Izzy. And before last week, I really thought Izzy was a gunner in terms of what you've been hearing coming out of camp. But ultimately, I think the last couple of games, he kind of forces you to reconsider that because he could be that change of pace back. Again, I would say he's the fastest running back on the team. Again, he's got that track speed ability, but adding a level of physicality to his game now as well is going to force people to recognize him a little bit more. But it really won't matter if he's still a liability when it comes to run block or pass blocking. That's going to be a problem because for us, the ultimate thing is making sure keeping Aaron Rodgers upright. And I think this coaching staff is not going to go ahead and risk it. If he doesn't improve in that aspect of the game, which we didn't really see him have to go ahead and step up and get in front of any kind of defenders in the blocking aspect over the last couple of games, we need to see that. That was an area where he struggled at last year. Yes, he's more physical right now. We know what he brings to the table in terms of speed, but protecting the quarterback, picking up that blitz, that's going to be important. And we've already seen Brandon Allen do it. We've seen Isaiah Davis do it, and we know Brees Hall can do it. So that's going to be the aspect that I think may or may not allow him to go ahead and crack that freaking running back room and not be that fourth guy. But from what I've seen in terms of his running style, he's definitely become more of a violent runner, more of a physical runner.
Speaking of, showcasing that speed, someone who showcased both speed and agility today was kick/punt returner Brennan Codrington. I've been called crazy. I actually really like Codrington, and I think he has a shot. I a bit of a shot to actually, make this roster. The thing is, there's just so much competition, and with every single roster spot being so valuable, are they going to want to use a spot on a guy like Codrington or a guy like Izzy, who you just spoke about? Do they want to carry 4 running backs? He would probably, if they did, he would basically be inactive on game day. So it's like, would you want to waste the roster spot on a guy like Izzy or add another defensive lineman like Watts or McGregor or carry Irv Charles, make room for him, who got to the punt, I think it was, almost jarred that punt. Yet Johnny Hector still got that punt off, and it was a beauty at that. But back to what I was saying about Brennan Codrington, he had 2 punt returns for 46 yards and 1 kick return for 63 yards. You look at a guy like Codrington, he showcased some of that during the first preseason game. He's quite undersized for a cornerback. He stands at 5'9". He has a ton of experience returning kicks, but not a ton playing cornerback. You look at a guy like Codrington. Do you think he's like a practice squad guy?
Listen, first and foremost, I'll be the first to admit I was not familiar with his game until this evening, but I am very familiar with it now. There is no way you can risk putting that dude on the practice team. Right now, with the rules in terms of how special teams is being played out, every freaking team is looking for someone who's going to be impact the game on special teams with these new rules. I didn't know who this guy was. I'll be the first to admit I wasn't really tracking him that much, wasn't really familiar with his game, but I assure you I am now, as is probably every other GM right now who's waiting for freaking, cut day to add some pieces to their roster. Impact players like that when it comes to this new formula in terms of the special teams aspect, I don't know if we can risk it now. The kid put on a clinic today. I was thoroughly impressed. And you're seeing all the comparisons already coming out in regards to how he has a little bit of Devin Hester to him in terms of his ability to evade and get outside and get upfield. I was impressed, man. And I don't believe that he's going to be able to. You can't risk putting him on the practice squad because if he's able to do that, what he did today a couple times in a season, that could be massive in terms of shifting that win-loss column. That field advantage aspect is important. He almost broke away and got a score too on that one run. Unfortunately, he lost balance and kind of went out of bounds. So this is a guy, man, and you're seeing him escape like player defenders all around him. It wasn't like he had clear lanes. No, he had to create space to go ahead and make those plays. So now I think personally, man, we might see a guy who just made his way onto this team. Whether that means you got to let go of Izzy or you're one less tight end down. I feel like what he did today with the new rules, you cannot risk not having that dude on the roster. You put him on the practice squad during cut periods. This game today specifically is going to be remembered by some general managers, and we might not see this kid again.
Yeah, you mentioned the new kickoff format. The new kickoff format requires 2 players in the quote landing zone. And with that being said, you seem to be pretty high on Codrington in the hopes of him being one of those players. You look and there's a lot of options for that number 2 spot. You have the likes of Isaiah Davis. We didn't see him return kicks today, but we saw him return kicks in the first preseason game. Tyler Harrell, we haven't seen him in preseason, but he's done a lot in terms of kicks during the practices. And then obviously Malachi Corley and Xavier Gibson, I'd say probably of the 2 best odds to be one of those names. Who do you see playing alongside Brandon Codrington, as you seem to be pretty high on him for the regular season?
I think it's still Gibson. I think that Gibson last year showed us enough that we know he's dangerous back there. His short area quickness and his burst is, in my opinion, elite. And I think he's a guy that, you put him back there, and if he gets blown up, it sucks, right? But I don't know if you want to risk, a guy like Isaiah Davis who you can throw into that rotation. Malachi Corley, who I think is going to get some meaningful reps as a slot guy, and potentially that outside wide receiver. I think you look at Gibson and it makes all the sense in the world. And that's who I would put alongside of him. You've got 2 guys who could potentially be home run hitters, both guys with some elite speed. And that's what you need back there. Some evasive freaking athletic freaks that can go ahead and find ways to go ahead and take advantage of the small area of operations you're going to have to their advantage. And I think Gibson makes all the sense in the world. He's proven to us last year he's capable at it. I know he's been kind of banged up during training camp, but we haven't really seen him out there. But I think, honestly, that should be the guy that we're trusting to go ahead and be out there for us come season opener.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have to disagree with you there. We saw Gibson, he had a very successful run last season returning punts, but not so much kicks. He was a little shaky there. Obviously, he had that, that touchdown week 1 that everyone will remember, but he, if just generally speaking, you look at his numbers, he was shaky at that kick position. Honestly, I look and I think that's Malachi Corley. Similar to what the Jets did with Xavier Gibson. You start him off in that kick return role, then you start to see, they start to involve him a couple weeks into those, gadget plays, and then he slowly works his way up to have a role as a slot receiver on this New York Jets roster. So if I had to pick today, I'd say Malachi Corley would be one of the 2 players back there. Rather Gibson. But, before we get into, the chat questions, Gunny, staying with the topic of special teams, like I mentioned earlier, Irv Charles got a hand on Johnny Hecker's punt. I think he had his team high special teams grade last year for PFF with a grade of 90.5. A lot of talks. Do they want to use a roster spot on a player like Charles who's solely going to be the gunner and nothing else? What are your thoughts on that? And could you see the Jets going with something like that?
Say it again, with who?
Irv Charles.
So listen, I actually think that what we've seen in that role with Stiggers might make Irv Charles a little bit more expendable, right? I think outside of his special team prowess, he doesn't really bring a lot to the table when it comes to playing wide receiver. And again, I like the guy, but I think Jason Brownlee and him are very, very similar in that fashion in terms of being the big body guys, but you've seen more from Jason Brownlee. I think, honestly, Stiggers might be the guy that makes it a little bit more feasible to let a guy like freaking Irv Charles go potentially make the practice squad because he's able to do a lot of that in terms of on special teams. And I think he brings more value as a potential cornerback 4, cornerback 5 on this roster. So For me, if it had to be me, if I had to pick today, I've enjoyed seeing Stiggers operate on special teams, and I think that he could replace what freaking Irv Charles did for us.
Yeah, and another name I think that you guys that fans should watch is really Isaiah Oliver. He has some, he wasn't I wouldn't call him a standout gunner, but he has experience playing there. And honestly, I know he's injured. I know he has to be practicing, but if he could get back on the field, I'd rather take a flyer on a guy like Malik Taylor than Irv Charles. He has chemistry with Rodgers, Hackett, Saleh. This whole Jets coaching staff, if you really think about it, he's more of a complete player. He plays special teams, not to the role that Charles would play it at, but he also would contribute to the offense. And I think with every roster spot being so valuable, you're going to want to. I personally think if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm going with the more complete player there, and
That
maybe
makes sense.
stash Irv Charles on the practice squad, or vice versa. I've heard ideas where it's like, okay, you give Charles the spot, but then stash Taylor on the practice squad because no one's going to make a move for him, and then you could elevate him 3 times a year before having to sign him to the 53-man roster. But let's get into your questions in the chat. Martin Mannion said McDonald had a sack too. Yes, that sack. McDonald did have a nice sack today, and it kind of reminded me similar to his pressure against the Browns. I don't know if you remember last year, but in the Hall of Fame game, his first snap in the preseason, he got right to the quarterback. But this time he actually recorded the sack. Gunny, what were your thoughts on his sack today?
Listen, Will McDonald and that spin move made that offensive lineman look like he was playing on rookie in Madden, right? Like that's how I felt, like how easy it was and flawless it was to get into the backfield. Will McDonald to me, I think, is going to surprise a lot of individuals. I know a lot of individuals are like, "Oh man, he's too small. He needs to be bigger." And I had to have a conversation about individuals that kept saying like, "Hey, there's concerns about his size. He's not big enough," and blah blah blah. And I asked the question, right? How big is Hassan Reddick? Because every Jets fan and their mom right now is freaking out about Hassan Reddick not being here. How big is Hassan Reddick? And nobody knew the answer to it. And I had to explain to him that he was actually 230 pounds. They have him marked at 240 now for the Eagles, but every weigh-in before season, if you look at the chart, it's 230 to 235 has been his weight. Right now, freaking Will McDonald is 235. So, yeah, you want him bigger, but the guy we were all clamoring for and are saying that the Jets defense is going to fall off of a cliff without weighs as much as Will McDonald. But Will McDonald, to me, has a deadly spin move, has elite bend, has significantly more length in terms of trying to get to the quarterback. So I'm a huge Will McDonald fan. I believe it is Will McDonald season, and I think today he's just building on his confidence. Right now, I think he's more focused on that in terms of just trying to get that confidence level. I hope this kid. I mean, I hope this kid doesn't really look at social media because right now the comparisons are, man, Will McDonald has to do Hassan Reddick things, which in all actuality he doesn't. He has to do Huff things, if we're being honest. So let's just be honest with that. And I think he's capable of doing that. So I hope, again, this is a confidence builder for him. That spin move is deadly. I mean, very, very deadly. We haven't seen the spin move that deadly since freaking Dwight Freeney, who made the Hall of Fame, utilized it consistently with the Colts. That everybody knew it was coming, but the offensive linemen couldn't stop it. Will McDonald is becoming that guy where you see him utilize it regularly, whether it's in practice, whether it's in training camp, whatever, and he gets into the backfield and he gets to the quarterback. They can't stop it. So I think he's only going to gain more confidence from it, man. But I love to see it because we need that level of confidence on our defensive line as the season gets closer.
Yeah, you mentioned the spin move there. I mean, I don't care that that's a backup tackle. No starting tackle in the NFL is stopping that. That is a sack on all 32 starting tackles. Actually, 64, excuse me. Each team has 2 starting tackles. I mean, that was just, great to see. And you just got to hope, obviously there's concerns regarding McDonald's weight, but you just got to hope. I mean, this guy could turn it around sometime soon. And it's like, this is why I want Reddick to show up so bad. It's like, now it puts pressure on a guy like McDonald or Clemens. At first, it's like, okay, you guys have time to sit and develop. But now with this whole Reddick saga, it's like, no, now and it's funny to think because Clemens and McDonald, both of them combined, they cannot fill Reddick's shoes. And I don't think really any duo in the NFL can. You look at Reddick, he surpassed double-digit sacks the past 4 seasons, recording 16 in 2022, finishing 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. You look at Michael Clemens coming off a really horrific, I would say, sophomore campaign, and McDonald coming off of an uneventful rookie season. I don't think those players can fill Reddick's shoes. You just got to hope, though, that, like you mentioned, comparing McDonald to Huff. If McDonald could turn into Bryce Huff, and hopefully the Jets will do something right and re-sign him if he turns into Bryce Huff, I'll take that as a win 100%. But Kuntz needs to get cut, Gunny. What do you what do you have to take away from that? Is he, he did have that rough touchdown drop today.
Listen, I think at this point we've seen enough, right? I think we were all really high on Coons. We thought, coming in with that high RAS score, that this dude, if properly motivated, properly coached, he can go ahead and do some insane things. But I haven't seen any improvement from him getting there to one just drive day one to now, right? Very, very athletic freak, incredible size. Again, that elite RAS score had us all hyped. You take the gamble. I'm not mad at Joe for taking the gamble when you're betting on this guy's potential based off of that RAS score, but the return on investment hasn't been there. I'm with Farouk on this one. It's time. I think this is a guy who's not going to make this roster. Maybe a practice squad guy specifically, but Kuntz now going into this year, you haven't seen any kind of development, in my opinion. That, yes, it was that catch that is like lower waist, got it. But it hit your hands, man. You got those long freaking arms for a reason. It hit your hands. Your team needs you to make that play. Take this opportunity to make a name for yourself. Instead, he kept doing Kuntz-like things. So, yeah, I think at this point, I'm there too. I think, you know what? The experiment was fun. Is he a practice squad guy? Sure. I would put him on the practice squad. But at this point, there's no way this guy's making the 53-man roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And what at least Yeboah, that he didn't really quote. I wouldn't say he stood out tonight, but he had a couple nice catches. I saw him make a couple, one or two nice blocks. The thing with Kuntz, he seems to tantalize fans due to his size, 6'8" frame. Yeah. But the thing is, people are forgetting. I think it was a seventh round pick. He was
seventh round pick.
Yeah, seventh round pick. I mean, he's a developmental project. This is not someone who comes into the NFL and is a top 1, top 2 guy on his roster. I mean, I think it's going to take maybe 1 to 2 more years, really. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Kuntz really doesn't show much until his rookie deal, and then he's kind of gone after that, or maybe the Jets do something where they, re-sign him to a 1 to 2 year deal. But I think Kuntz is a developmental project. He has the size, he has the athleticism. The question is, how is he going to apply that? And, I completely agree with Farouk there. Let's see, what else do we have? Harlan disagrees with Gunny and I. Codrington is good, but he doesn't make the team. Gunny, what do you got there?
Yeah, I think we're undervaluing the importance of this new special teams rules. I think we are. I think that, yes, in essence of what else you bring to the table, question marks, got you. But there's guys like Devin Hester who did nothing else well but special teams. He's a Hall of Famer. Like Devin Hester is a Hall of Famer based off of his ability to play special teams. And these new rules have added another layer of value to guys who can do what he did today. So I mean, we'll have to see, right? Time will tell. But I really believe when it comes down to it, a guy like freaking Kuntz will get cut. A guy like Irv Charles might be let go to make room for Codrington, because what he did today, if we don't value it, fine. But he's not going to be available for us come waiver wire time. A team's going to say, hey, bring this dude in. He's going to help our special teams maybe once to twice a season. He's going to make a play that's going to impact and change the game. And that could mean the difference between winning your division. That could mean the difference between freaking making the playoffs. And because of that, he's going to go ahead and have value. So I think that he's going to go ahead and if we don't keep him, we're not going to get him on the practice squad either. He will be on a team before the waiver wire clears.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand where Harlan is coming from, just given the fact that every single roster spot's valuable. Would you rather,
Exactly.
Not give Codrington a roster spot and give one to Eric Watts or Braden McGregor, one of the two who, may be on the bubble for the New York Jets? It really depends there. And also the fact that there's so much talent at that position that also will make the roster just due to their talent at their skill position, whether it's Isaiah Davis, Malachi Corley, or Xavier Gibson. So I definitely understand where Harlan is coming from, but I have to disagree there. Farouk coming back in, I'm liking what I see from Smith, Brendan Smith out of the UFL. He's making contested catches. Gunny, I'll let you go here first.
Let's see from Smith. He's being So again, I like we were just talking about, right? In terms of valuable roster spots, every single one is going to be very valuable. I like what I've seen from Smith. I think if there's going to be a surprise guy we keep, that 6th, 7th wide receiver, potentially, he could be the guy. I haven't seen enough on him on special teams to really feel like maybe he can hold value on special teams. Those contested catches, again, we got to remember those are coming up against people who are going to be, working at Walmart, maybe garbage men here in the real near future. So I think when you start seeing those, and again, I think it's important to realize he's got the potential to make those catches because of his ability to focus and allowing himself to go ahead and make those plays. But the quality that he's facing is significantly less than what he would face if he was on a 53-man roster. And what have we seen from him other than him making those catches against guys who won't be in the NFL come September? So I think that's my only question mark for Smith. I like the kid. I like what he's shown us. I just don't like it. I don't want to put too much weight on it because I haven't seen him do anything on the special teams aspect, which is really what we would need him to do coming in as wide receiver 6 or 7. But again, wouldn't be opposed to it if he's making those kind of catches against freaking teams 2s and 3s. I'd be very, very happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Smith, I think I have it here. Smith finished today with 2 catches for 11 yards. I think I made one nice grab that I saw, but I think he had 2 for 70 last game, the first preseason game. Definitely took, a step down there in terms of production. But honestly, Gunny, you mentioned, the possibility of him being like a 5th or a 6th or 7th guy, excuse me. I think personally a dark horse, someone who stood out today, I wouldn't say stood out. He made a bit of an impact though. 2 catches for 25 yards. That's Lance McCutcheon, and Aaron Rodgers called McCutcheon out during his media availability, and he's looked super athletic. Rodgers seems to like, if I'm going with a dark horse guy, I'm going with Lance McCutcheon, and all my listeners know my stance. I absolutely love Malik Taylor, and I think Malik Taylor will, I'm not going to say will just because of the injury that he's battling right now. But if he could get back on the field for the 3rd preseason game, show some sort of competent play, the Jets coaching staff seems to really like him. I think he'll make the roster. Let's see.
Can you see all of the comments, even the ones from my channel?
Yes, can you not?
I can't. No, I can't. That's why I was making sure you can't see. Yeah. I was looking on my channel and I'm like, I can see them commenting. I just can't. I can't see it on our screen.
Yeah.
All right, my bad, guys. So he does see your comments. I just wanted to make sure we were getting a good balance for you guys.
Yeah, making sure. Big fella says Codrington over Izzy. I know, Gunny, you mentioned you seem to like Izzy's playing. You seem to like Codrington as well. Where do you stand there?
I'm with him on that one. If you're telling me I got to pick one of those guys, I listen. I love Braylon Allen. Love Braylon Allen. I'm a big fan of what Isaiah Davis can mean for this team. So right there, you're 3 deep at the running back position. So I don't think Izzy would get a lot of playing time unless we're resting our guys because we don't want to go ahead and get them banged up as we move forward in the season. So I think Codrington can bring more value in terms of being impactful to get us into field position to win a game or 2 in a season. I don't know if I feel the same about Izzy's value. I think Izzy, you're great, great to have RB4. But if you're telling me I have to pick one of those individuals, I'm with the big fellow on this one. I'm going with Codrington because, again, in that the special teams aspect to me is so important. If you can shift the field position game in your favor because of special teams play, that could literally be the difference of winning the division or making a playoff spot. Because that's going to equate to, in my opinion, anywhere from 2, maybe even 3 wins in any given season. So I think Codrington brings that to the table, whereas Izzy, I don't think he moves the needle much, one way or another.
Yeah, you like I said, I completely agree there between Codrington and Izzy. I don't think the Jets will carry 4 running backs anyways. But Gunny, I actually have a question for you. You seem to be high on Codrington. You mentioned the possibility of, Stickers maybe being a gunner. Like I mentioned earlier, Isaiah Oliver does have experience there. It's coming down to the final roster spot. You mentioned Codrington, has the ability to shift the momentum of a game. The roster spot's either going to Brandon Codrington or Irvin Charles. Who are you giving that spot to?
Give it to Codrington. I am. I'm telling you. I think Stiggers can do a lot of what Irv Charles does. If I'm being honest, Codrington to us right now thus far, it's only been 2 games, and I get that, but it's 2 games in these new freaking rules that every team is having to adjust to. And I think he's probably had the most impact thus far in the preseason, taking advantage of these rules. His short area burst and quickness is good, really, really good. His ability to go ahead and escape what looks like in a phone booth, because again, he had defenders all around him, and he was still able to go ahead and escape, maintain his balance, get upfield, and get yards. That to me right now, he's showing us he's a value in this scheme, in this level of play when it comes to the special teams. I'm taking Connington, man. I like what I saw today, and I think this is enough tape for him in one preseason game that he won't be available to us if we cut this guy.
Yeah, and it's funny. He's another undrafted guy that Joe Douglas really found. North Carolina Central, not a huge football school. Joe Douglas found him. He was, I think they signed him during OTAs. Immediately, we saw him get out on the field. Like I said, he showcased his ability the first two games, his ability to speed, get to the outside, everything. But yeah, that's definitely a name to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on there. But moving to the defensive side of the ball, someone who kind of stood out today, Shamar, I think is how you say his name, Bartholomew. He had a couple nice pass breakups, a nice stuff in the backfield. What do you take away a guy out of him? Do you think he's nothing more than a camp body?
Yeah, so I'm looking at that cornerback room, right? And it's getting pretty full in terms of talented guys. And for me, I look at a guy like him, and I think he's a guy you can stash on the practice squad. Again, you're talking about a guy who made some really good plays. What he still did it against some guys who won't be playing in the NFL at this time next month, right? Third, fourth quarter, you saw him really kind of shine a little bit and make those plays against some fourth, fifth string guys who are fighting for a roster spot. I'm for it though, right? Because he shows you he's got heart. He shows you he's capable. You've seen what the Jets have done with other defenders that they've kind of stashed away for a little while, and now you're seeing guys like Bernard Converse really kind of light the field up a little bit too. I think this is a guy that you could potentially stash away on the practice squad. But again, man, cornerback is a premium position, and he puts enough good tape out there, and a GM might think, you know what, this guy might be able to be our cornerback 5, cornerback 6. Bring him in, you know what I'm saying? I think the 3-man roster. But if I had to bet on it, I think he's the kind of guy you could potentially stash on the practice squad. And that's just based off of the competition he's facing when he's making these plays. You like the intangibles, right? But you still want to go ahead and see a guy like that do it against some guys who will actually be playing in the NFL come next month.
Yes, staying with the topic of defensive backs, there's someone who got injured who stood out in the first preseason game. He made it a couple nice, had some nice snaps in coverage. That's Jarek Bernard Converse. He's officially converted from the safety position to cornerback. LSU product. The Jets really seem to like him. What are your thoughts on JBC? What do you take away from his game?
Bernard Converse?
Yeah.
I think we've got another freaking stud built by this coaching staff, right? This is a guy that when he was brought in, you didn't see much of him year one. We've been kind of waiting to kind of see it all kind of come together. You knew what he brought to the table in terms of pedigree. We kind of all had an idea what he could be something because of his athletic profile, but we haven't seen it yet. But we've seen it now in back-to-back games to where like he's an eraser. He's literally proven to be an eraser on defense. And for me, that's a guy you definitively can't risk letting go. So I think he makes this roster. I think he's going to be that guy that you look at and you think to yourself, all right, things hit the fan. Can he be Hall? Like Hall we had on the roster last year, he's gone now. Can he be this year's Hall for us, right? Like you can go ahead and put him in there and not feel like he's a liability. So it's going to be tough, man. I think that the Jets going to have a tough time looking at the cornerback room and making a decision on who they're going to keep because you're seeing guys like Stiggers, you're seeing like Bernard Eccles is still here, right? Like you're going to be in a position to where you got to make a choice and you can't risk whoever you decide to let go to not make the roster on the practice squad or whatnot. But it's a problem that the Jets have not had, man, and I'm glad for us to be here. We're talking about freaking cornerback 5 and 6. Oh man, what if we let this guy go? He might get picked up by another team, and like this is what we're having a conversation about. So it goes to show you how far this roster has gone from what it was just 2 years ago. You know, let's be honest. Just 2 years ago, we were an expansion level roster, and in the last 2 years, we've seen this freaking roster get to a point where it's being ranked as at the top roster in the NFL. So it's a good problem for us to have. But I'm pleased with how far along, JBC has come because he was somebody I think a lot of us had high hopes for. We thought we kind of got a deal. We drafted him, and you're seeing him the last couple of games, and you're like, yeah, man, this dude is playing lights out football. So it's good to have this problem if you're a Jets fan.
Yeah, you mentioned having to kind of pick and choose at the cornerback position. Obviously, you have the big three in Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. Then you have Quantez Stiggers, Brendan Eccles. JBC and Codrington, who's been emerging. Yeah, who would you consider the odd one out in that group? Personally, right now, I'm leaning towards Eccles. The Jets seem to, have liked Eccles' ability on special teams, but what he has shown, and compared to what the other players have shown throughout preseason training camp, etc. I think Eccles is personally the odd one out right now. What about you?
I was actually having the same conversation with my brother-in-law much long ago in regards to who might be on the bubble in our cornerback room, because I do believe we've got the best cornerback room in football with those top three guys. And then going down the line, Eccles, who's been with us for a while now, who's had some meaningful snaps for us, he hasn't been having the best camp. And you're seeing these guys kind of come along, not to mention they're younger, right? They bring a little value in that aspect. They're going to be more affordable to keep long term because they're all on those rookie contracts. I think Eccles is the guy, man. I think you're right. I think a guy that is going to surprise a lot of individuals. Does he have any kind of trade value? I don't know. I can't honestly sit here and say like he has trade value, but he might. There's a team right now that could potentially see him, in their rotation being an asset. So I do believe that he's that guy. We might see a trade, whether it's for a 6th or a 7th round pick, whatever. But a team might not risk him getting 2 waivers and putting a 7th or 6th out there to bring him in. So yeah, no, for me it's Eccles too. Like, and I've been talking to my brother about this. So like for me it's Eccles as well. I think he's that guy like who, again, was a starter for the Jets. But we've gotten to this point now where this roster is so deep and it has so much talent. We can afford to let that guy go because we've got younger guys to replace him, because we've got a little bit of a cornerback factory kind of going right now for the New York Jets. Man, again, night and day from where we were at just a few years ago. But yeah, I'm with you on this one, man. I think Eccles would be the odd man out in this situation.
Everyone smash that like button on both channels. Make sure you are subscribed to both channels. Gunny's channel is at New York Jets Situation Report. My channel is at NY Flight Jets Tech. My channel, we are currently at 957 subscribers. If we hit 1,000 before the season starts, I will be giving away a signed Joe Klecko photo. So make sure you go and hit subscribe. But yeah, like I mentioned, I agree with you there. I think Eccles is the odd one out, just given what the other players have shown who are competing for Eccles' job. It's just between Stiggers, JBC, and now Codrington emerging as of the last few games. He definitely seems to not have impressed a ton throughout training camp and preseason, but definitely a name to keep an eye on. The great Gator McCluskey checking in here. Hey guys, good to see you. That game, along with all the preseason games, are hard to watch. Wouldn't you rather just see televised scrimmages? No fans you'd have to pay to watch these trash games. Gunny, you're out of market as well, so you have to pay to watch these quote trash games. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, but get it. And I paid, man. I paid. I'm definitely paying the premium here to go ahead and watch these games. And yeah, it's rough. It's rough. But again, I think that's what we are as Jets fans, right? The majority of us that are right now post game, it's 10:30 right now on the East Coast, are the freaks that are literally watching a stream about us talking about preseason football. Like, this is how you know we're sick and we're some ridiculous fanatics, right? So everybody in here paid to probably watch this game if you're out of market. But I know you're sickos, because here we are at 10:30 at night talking about a preseason game where the Jets put up 15 points. So yeah, Gator, I agree with you, man. I wish we didn't have to pay for it, but the fact of the matter is we're gonna keep paying for it because we love this team. Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't really good football, but it's football, and it's us seeing the Jets operate. We got to see a little bit of a taste of what they're doing, I think, on the offensive side of the football. So that's exciting. Kind of seeing a little bit of access to the motion. We saw some motion plays out there right now. You saw a couple of guys get open where the backup guys couldn't hit them, but they were clearly open in the middle of the field, like wide open, where we could have just threw it up and he could have went and got it. So we're seeing a little bit of what this team can be, I think. And again, the defense played pretty good today, especially the defensive line. You saw a little bit of an issue with the secondary kind of missing out on some tackles and whatnot and letting some big plays happen. But offensive line, seeing Olu Fashanu, I enjoy seeing that. I enjoyed watching Braylon Allen. So there's some pluses to it, Gator. There are some pluses to it. And let's be honest, we're freaks, man. We're fanatics, Jets fanatics. So we're going to pay for it one way or another. It would be nice to watch it for free, but they know who we are, so they're going to keep charging us.
Absolutely, and I'm lucky enough that I am in the New York market, so I get to hear the great Ian Eagle and Anthony Beck today on the call. They also had the first preseason game. Anthony Beck moving into the radio booth full time for the New York Jets, starting in the regular season. But keep going with your questions, Farouk. What do all the penalties say about coaching? I love Salah, but today's sloppy play was concerning. Gunny, what do you got?
Honestly, I think they cleaned it up. I think the sloppy stuff started early on. You could tell that it was disgusting. But I will say this: I like how they held those guys accountable, because if y'all didn't notice, everybody that got a penalty called on them, they got right to the sideline. They were off the field immediately. So the accountability aspect that they've been go ahead and doing in training and is carried on into actual games in the preseason. I hope it carries on into the regular season, because you saw the moment those penalties were called, the guys shook their heads and they already went to the sideline and they missed out on a play. So I got to say I appreciate that approach to making sure you hold those guys accountable. But if you're looking at it late second to the end of the game, there wasn't really any flags thrown on the Jets. It was all being thrown on the Panthers. So they cleaned it up, I think, as the game went along. Early on, it was disgusting and disturbing. I'll give you that. But I think as the game went on, I got to say, holding them accountable, you're seeing that change in it, because the flags weren't being thrown on the Jets, or being thrown on the Panthers. So frustrating, yes, but holding them accountable, I do believe is working, because you again saw everybody knew the rule. Because the moment it happened, the flag was called, and the number was called, they were walking off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely cleaned the play up. Obviously, most notable, I think the biggest penalty to keep an eye on, just because I think it was the biggest name with the penalty, Olu Fashanu. He had the
Yeah.
holding call, but then he cleaned it up after. I like that they're moving him out to right tackle, and what he's shown, the possibility of him, possibly making a push to earn the starting job over Morgan
Yeah.
Moses. I mean, I think that's Olu's best chance to really crack playing time on this New York Jets roster. It's either that or filling in for Tyron Smith when he misses games, as he hasn't played a full season since 2015. But Sarav 771 says Charles injured today. Yes, Charles did go down. He
Yeah.
did not come back in the game. JBC also did not come back in the game. Gunny, what do you take away from those injuries? I don't think they were massive injuries, but how does this affect their where they stand on this roster?
Yeah, to me, it didn't look like there were massive injuries, right? It looked like more one win got knocked out of them and maybe a stinger for the other. Again, that's just me just looking at it and kind of seeing what they were holding and them doing the moves where they're trying to catch their breath and whatnot. Hopefully it's nothing major. Again, I'll say this, right? Like, I think when it comes to the injury front, I'm going to knock on wood, because as Jets fans, we've been very, very blessed and fortunate thus far. I don't know what's going on. The football guys have decided that maybe it's our time to have a veil of fortune when it comes to injuries. But they didn't look like bad injuries. They didn't look like the kind of things that, oh my gosh, this means they're out indefinitely, etc. But again, I don't think Charles makes the roster this year. I don't. JBC, I do believe he'll be on the roster. Hopefully it's not a serious injury. But in terms of Charles, injured or not, I don't think he winds up making the roster come the 53-man cut day. But again, I don't think those injuries were major from what I can see again on my TV.
Yeah, I think these are just minor things that the Jets want to just take caution of immediately, get them off the field as quick as possible, and just hope for their recovery. Like I said, as quick as possible. BMAC coming in, it's not worth Rodgers playing next week. I personally, Gunny, I'll throw it to you first, but I would like to see him play for a series or two.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think we fall in a very, very small group of individuals, but I want to see our quarterback play snaps in the preseason, kind of make sure we kind of get any rust knocked off. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he was talking about on the most recent conference during training camp, press conference during training camp, that he felt that after a good camp that he finally felt at 97%. Right. This is a guy who's been cleared 100%, medically, but there's nothing hindering him medically or physically. But he specifically stated that he feels he's at 97%, which leads me to believe it's only mental. So if that mental block, that last 3% needs to be knocked off, I would rather it happen in the preseason, when he gets out there and he takes a hit if he's got to take a hit, but he gets back up and he knows, okay, I'm good. I can play football. I can trust my body. I can get to it. Or maybe it's him driving down the field and scoring on a 70-yard drive, whatever it might be. I would rather him get that knocked out now before we face off against freaking the 49ers real defense or some dogs on that defensive line against a game that's going to count, which I think now the Jets have a chance at actually winning when you're looking at some of the issues that they're dealing with. So I would rather the Russ gets knocked out now before we get to the game. But I think we're in the minority on this one, Connor. The majority of Jets fans, I've said this too, look at me like I'm crazy. But no, I want to see Aaron Rodgers take some snaps. That 97%, get him to 100% when he goes into California to play the 49ers.
Yeah, and we saw him for I think was it one? I think it was one drive he played in the third preseason game against the Giants last year, where he had a touchdown to Garrett Wilson. But I mean, knock the rust off, and we're not asking him to play a quarter, a half, or a full game. We're asking him to play 1 to 2 drives, and I think it really depends. If it's like one drive where he marches down the field, gets close, kicks a field goal or a touchdown, I think you just call it quits there. Maybe first drive it's a 3 and out, they punt the ball, you trot him out for a second one. But yeah, I mean, knock the rust off him. I really would like to see him. You mentioned having quote dogs on the defensive line. Another player who stood out for the Jets today, Takk McKinley, former first round pick. He played under Jeff Ulbrich in Atlanta. What are your thoughts on McKinley? I'm personally a big fan of him, and I don't think Jet fans should be surprised if he actually makes this roster and makes a difference, as that way he would revert back into the form that he was expected to play in throughout his whole career, as he was a first round pick.
I think Jets fans don't realize this, right? I know we're freaking out about it. I've been hearing a lot of individuals when they talk about the defensive line, oh, no, we can't expect Clemens to do this, or Clemens can't be the other guy on the other side of JJ. Why do we keep mentioning Clemens? Like, I agree. Clemens is not the guy that I have in my mind replacing even JFM, let alone Huff's production. But McKinley, yeah, he's a dude. He's a dude. There are 6 freaking first-round talents on this defensive line. 6. 3 of them have been added in the offseason. We keep forgetting that aspect, and I don't understand why. McKinley has looked like he's hungry. Now, this is the guy trying to go ahead and refigure out the game of football. I've been a very big fan of what this coaching staff has been able to do to replenish these guys on the defensive line's careers. You're seeing them freaking come here. Guys like JFM and Huff.
Solid.
Were no It's Solly, exactly. No, well, Solly was a first rounder, but
he was but he was kind of similar to I've compared it to McKinley's situation. They have that high people are forgetting Solly was he was selected 21st overall. He was the third overall pick. And it's it took him a couple years. Obviously, he hasn't lived up to those expectations. But right now, if you told me Solomon Thomas was a 4th or 5th round pick in his draft class, I'd tell you he was an amazing player. And he's really, I think he had 5.5 sacks last year. He was great against the pass and the run. That's what I think the Jets really need to look for in McKinley.
Yep. And I think McKinley's going to surprise people. I do. I think McKinley's going to surprise people because we've seen this team do it time and time again. This coaching staff has been able to find a way to replenish individuals who had those high ceilings and never quite reached it. And then they come here, boom, all of a sudden they figured it out. People, I think, forget that Quinnen Williams, before this coaching staff, was being deemed potentially not worthy of having been a top 5 pick. Did we all forget all of a sudden that we were having those conversations about Quinnen Williams just a few years ago? This coaching staff gets their hands on him. No one's talking about Quinnen Williams not being worth a top 5 pick anymore coming into the NFL, right? So I think that when you look at the arsenal that this coaching staff has at their disposal, this is why I think I'm not stressing out as much about it as everybody else in regards to what this defensive line can be. Does Hassan Reddick make the New York Jets better? 100%. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the dude doesn't make the Jets better. But we're talking about a top 5 defense to potentially the top 2, top 1 defense. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about making the Jets defense better with the addition of Hassan Reddick. The Jets defense doesn't fall off of a cliff because Reddick isn't here. And I think we're sleeping on what this coaching staff can do with some of the new talent they brought in. And that includes some of the undrafted guys like your Watts, your Taylor. Like, I think we got some guys as well that are going to surprise us quite a bit in terms of their ability to go ahead and produce. But yeah, man, McKinley's definitely been fun to watch. I'm seeing a guy who's hungry and he's looking like he wants to prove something. He looks explosive off the edge. He looks powerful. He's pushing the offensive lineman into the chest of the quarterbacks. I'm pumped about the assets we currently have in the building right now, and the team is too. And you're seeing it in the preseason right now that they're showing us, hey man, defensive line might be just fine.
And when you say, Jet fans talk about the possibility of Quinnen Williams being a buster, you talk about the Quinnen Williams that signed a 4-year, $96 million extension last summer, who has an AAV of $24 million a year, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. He was ranked 2nd by executives, coaches, and scouts. and that was the guy who was considered quote a bust. I mean, it's
Correct.
it's crazy to think all these conclusions that get drawn right away from these players. Some of them need time to develop, and hopefully, you got to hope that's what the Jets get in McKinley. I mean, this guy was brought in on a mini camp tryout. It wasn't even a
Yeah.
1-year deal; it was a tryout.
Yeah.
And then they ended up inking him to a 1-year deal, and it's still really a preseason prove-it deal, not a 1-year prove-it deal. Anthony Beck said it on the broadcast today perfectly. It's a preseason prove-it deal, not a 1-year prove-it deal. And he showcased that I really think all he needs to earn a roster spot. So, yeah, I definitely think that's a name to keep an eye on. But a couple more questions before we wrap. We got DKB in here. It's still a bit ugly, but execution-wise, we look miles ahead of last year. Like the shotgun toss run game wrinkle I've been seeing too.
Yeah, in terms of what the product we're seeing right now, we'd have to be lying to ourselves to really not see the, in my opinion, drastic improvement. Could it be nicer? Could it be cleaner? Yes. But again, we're seeing like the second team, third team guys who won't make the roster doing this stuff too. So I'm really anxious to see what the guys who are getting all the snaps in training camp and in practice are going to look like, the first and second teamers. I'm anxious to see what that looks like, because again, if it looks, in my opinion, this much cleaner with the third, fourth, fifth guys on that freaking depth chart, what is it going to look like from the guys, 1 through 2 when they're out there? So I'm expecting to see a drastic uptick in terms of cleaning this thing up. I think it's going to look a lot better when everybody's out there, which is why I want to see it again in preseason. Get all the ones out there freaking and even if it's for one drive next week, get all the ones out there for one drive next week. Just see it going through the progression, seeing year 2 in this freaking scheme, year 2 with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, I kind of want to see that happen myself. But ultimately, listen, one way or another, I feel good about this season. I feel good about this roster. And I love the step they've taken into being a more disciplined unit from what we saw last year.
Yeah, you talk about taking a step in the right direction. Someone who's taken a step in the wrong direction is Hassan Reddick. He officially, formally requested a trade out of the New York Jets organization. A week from today, no, it was Monday. He requested a trade out of the New York Jets organization. Joe Douglas simply came out and said they're not trading him. If they were to deal him, which I don't think they will, I think he's going to just need to show up if he wants to get paid. If they were to deal him, I mean, what do you think that looks like? Because, I mean, the Jets were it's a complete clown show right now. I mean, they get this great deal for Reddick, and now he's holding out, requesting a trade. If they had to deal him, what do you think that looks like?
Honestly, my dream scenario, if they were to deal him, I just saw Bernard say it in the chat, like, trade him for Devontae Adams straight up, and I'm a happy camper. If you bring in Devontae Adams for the price of Reddick, I couldn't even begin to explain to you how ecstatic I would be as a Jets fan, and everybody should be ecstatic about that too. Because one thing I'll say is this: when it comes to the defensive side of football, the Reddick thing, everybody's saying like he makes or breaks his defense. I don't think that's the case. I think this coaching staff has proven to us they might not be good at a lot of other things, but the one thing they have proven to us without question is that they know how to coach up a defense.
Yep.
So I'm not worried about our defense until I have to worry about our defense. Now, if we're talking about the offense, if this was like, let's say, Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses that's holding out, I'd freak out. I'd panic because on the offense side of the football, I have a lot of questions on what this team can accomplish. So if you can go ahead and trade a guy who's never played for the Jets ever before, who really hasn't shown us what his impact could be on the Jets, for a guy like Devontae Adams, who already has rapport with our freaking quarterback, who's going to be that wide receiver 1B to the 1A that is a younger Garrett Wilson who's up and coming. I'll tell you this. I think we go from being, in my opinion, a top 10 offense to a top 5 like that. That's the impact I think Devontae Adams brings to the table if he became a New York Jet. So that would be the ideal situation for me, but I'm with you. I don't think it's going to happen. I think ultimately Joe Douglas is going to stand firm on this one. Reddick doesn't really have much leverage. Listen, man, either you play or you don't. Fine. You'll be on the Jets roster again next year. So what does that do for you when you're 30 years old, going on 31, another year older? You're a speed rusher that depends on your speed to do what you do. Yep, you got to play ball. Now, if you play ball and you freaking ball out and you get 10-plus sacks and you're on a freaking Super Bowl team, doors open up for you next year because you bring a lot more value in terms of being a guy who's going to be a leader. You've got the postseason experience. You're still catching 10-plus sacks. Like, a lot of things can go your way. But for me, man, I think when it boils down to it, that the leverage is in the Jets court. I think he'll suit up. I think he'll play. I doubt he'll miss actual games, But I was also the sort of person that said that I don't think he was going to miss preseason games either. So here we are.
Yeah, so at first I was concerned when he started missing. Well, he wasn't at OTAs. I was like, okay, this is a little shaky here, but I mean it's voluntary workouts. Not everyone needs to be there. It's fine. And then everyone was like, the real question comes if he's here for a mini camp, and then it's like, all right, he's not here for mini camp. Then everyone's like, well, the real question is he here for training camp? He's not at training camp. Well, the real question becomes, is he here for preseason? He's not at preseason. Well, the real question becomes, is he here for the regular season? So it's like it's a never ending saga with this
Yeah.
Reddick guy. But I mean, he's eventually going to give in. I think his mindset between the holdout in terms of the fines is like, I'm going to get reimbursed by the new deal that I'm going to sign. So it's like, I mean, the money that he's getting fined to an average person, I mean, that is a ton of money. But it's like this is pocket change for a player like Reddick. He's currently demanding an extension in the range of $25 to $28 million. That puts him between T.J. Watt and Myles Garrett for one of the high, I think sixth or something, a sixth it might be, or a little, I think fourth it might be for the highest. Yes, fourth highest paid edge rusher in the league. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But we're creeping up on the 1 hour mark. First post game show of the year for both of us, I believe, Gunny. I don't
Yeah.
think you.
Facts.
Yeah, first post game show of the year. Seems like a success. You guys seem to love it. A ton of engagement. We have 233 people in here watching live. Make sure you're subscribed to both of our channels. My channel is NY Flight Jetstuck. Gunny's is at New York Jet Situation Report. Everyone, thank you guys for watching. But Gunny, before I let you go, I started this signature question with my guests, I'd say about a month or so ago. At the end of
Okay.
every show, this is my signature question. You gotta answer it here. 4 dinner guests, anyone in the world, dead or alive, who are you taking?
4 dinner guests.
Yep.
Man, all right. Yeah, Muhammad Ali. I definitely want to have a conversation with that man in his prime. I have a couple of questions I want to ask him. Between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, there was a while where I always swore it would be Michael Jordan, but the more and more I'm learning about Kobe Bryant after his passing, Kobe Bryant. I think Kobe Bryant, man, is a guy that had a level of intellect and work ethic and just personality that I would love to go ahead and sit down, ask him a couple of questions, man, about the way his brain works. So Kobe Bryant, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I definitely would love to have a conversation with a guy like Megatron. Calvin Johnson, to me, bro, is one of those guys where it's freak human being. Freak human being never made any sense. Physically, just doesn't add up in regards to the things he could accomplish on the field. So I would love to sit down and kind of talk to him and kind of get an idea of whether it's all genetic or what kind of workout regime that he had. I got a son. I would love to go ahead and talk to my son about like, hey, this is how you can be like freaking Megatron. So
yeah,
I would want to have that conversation. And honestly, man, my all-time favorite freaking basketball player of all time, Allen Iverson. I would love to sit down with Allen Iverson, man, and have dinner with him, bro. Like AI was the reason why I got into basketball when I was a kid. I modeled my game after him, even though I was 6'2", bigger than he was, but I tried to be like AI. Allen Iverson was the guy that made me fall in love with basketball, man. So definitely Allen Iverson would be the guys. That will be my 4 guys.
Yeah, you mentioned Megatron there, the workout regime. It's also interesting given that he cut his career short so early. So you could also, mention something there. Why would you do that? I mean, you're such a freak of nature. What happened? Did you put too much of a toll on your body? Did you just blatantly not enjoy the game of football anymore? Did you push yourself too hard too early on? I mean, there's a surplus of questions you could ask to all those guys.
Facts.
Muhammad Ali, obviously one of the biggest historical figures in the world, if you think about it. I mean, in the world, if you think about it, and AI. Legendary basketball player, and Kobe Bryant. It's so funny when Kobe Bryant first passed away. I remember reading it. I knew who Kobe Bryant was. I honestly I didn't know anything about him. I knew who he was. I think I played with him in NBA 2K a couple times. But ever since he's passed away, I've read a ton on him. The Mamba mentality. Big fan of him. I mean, what he'd do to his his teammates in the locker room would just be insane. But Gunny, really appreciate you joining me. Everyone, thank you guys for watching. Now it's time for your final thoughts.
Easy day, man. Like for me, when it comes down to it, I think we should be excited as Jets fans. I think Joe Douglas has put together an incredible roster. I mean, again, you've seen it all over. It's not just Jets fans talking about this now. It's all over the media. Even other content creators talk about this Jets roster as thinking that we're loaded. This is a stacked team. The biggest fear that everybody keeps saying is like, man, but can they stay healthy? That's it. It's not can the Chiefs beat them. It's not can the Bills beat them or the Dolphins. It's can they stay healthy. That's the biggest competition the Jets apparently have because that's the only thing people keep talking about when they talk about the Jets. Hey, the roster is freaking stacked. Those dogs are ready to go, but can they stay healthy? So I look at that and I think to myself, it's a great position to be in when you take into consideration where we were at just 3 years ago when we had an expansion level roster here. The Hassan Reddick situation, man, for those of y'all that are freaking out about it and are talking about pay the man, pay the man, pay the man. I'm going to just ask y'all one question. Hassan Reddick is going into year 7 on his 4th team. Why is it that no other team he's played for, that he's actually performed for, has given the man a long-term deal? I know that everything we're seeing is based off of his stats, right? But to me, there's always something that we're not aware of. And I think freaking Howie Roseman for the Eagles is a really, really smart GM. We were able to get Hassan Reddick for a 3rd-round pick 2 years from now. I do believe there is more to it that we're just not privy to because, again, this is a guy, like you said, over the last freaking 4 years has been a beast, a freak, and yet still couldn't get a long-term deal with his own teams that he was playing for. 2 different teams. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think there's more to it. But, yes, I still think he makes the Jets better. And, no, I don't think we should go ahead and pay the man $25 million a year.
Absolutely. He did grow up in New Jersey, but he grew up rooting for the Eagles and he attended Temple University in Philly. Yeah. Why wouldn't he stay with the team he grew up rooting for? Like you mentioned, there's always something behind that. But Gunny, really appreciate you joining me. Everyone, thank you guys for watching. And as always, JTS, Jets.